In a couple of days, we're going to be celebrating and memorializing the most significant event in all of human history. And we have the holiday of Shavuos, or Shavuot, which is celebrated on the 6th day of the month of Sivan, Hebrew month of Sivan. Today is the 2nd day of the month of Sivan. Thus, this upcoming Sunday, which I guess will be May 24th, is the holiday of Shavuot. So that kicks off from, as we know, all Jewish holidays start with the eve of. Thus, Saturday night, directly right after Shabbos, goes. There's no buffer zone. It leaves one and goes into the other. This is one of the unique times that we have in the Jewish calendar, where we have what's called a 3-day holiday. Essentially, if someone's observant of the laws of Shabbat and the holidays, they're going to have from Friday afternoon, Friday eve, when Shabbat starts, through Monday night, when the 2nd day of Shavuot is over, it's uninterrupted, just spiritual, yes. Yeah, basically the phone's off for, how many hours is that? That would be 72 hours plus change.
You can still barbecue.
You could still barbecue, you're right. There are some differences in the prohibitions of what you could do on Shabbat versus what you can do on the holidays. Example is you're allowed to cook on the holidays. Suppose Shabbat, one of the things you're not do is to cook. But you're not allowed to make a new fire. So provided you have an etched-in fire, whether you leave your oven on or you leave your burner on or you have an actual flame that you leave on, either way, you should be fine to cook on the holiday.
Wait. So how are you going to do your barbecue?
No, so you do your barbecue by, let's say you get a small little canister of propane. You attach that to the barbecue, so you don't let it run out. So you turn it on, the gas. You bring in an etched-in fire. You bring an existing fire, drop it in there. You're good to go.
You're going to need the gas. You can turn
right.
the gas.
Well,
the gas on or off?
Well, you might be able to lower the gas. That's the question, but you sure can't turn off the gas. You're allowed to perpetuate fires. It means have one fire light another fire, but you would not be allowed to turn off a fire.
But you can keep the propane. Well, I guess
what people do to circumvent that is they get a small canister that runs out anyhow after a couple of hours. So that way it goes out on its own. If you really want to barbecue.
So you're gonna. I'm trying to understand the logistics of it.
Well, you're supposed to eat dairies anyway.
Well, no, I won't. Not my house.
No, it's meat, full-fledged meat.
Huh?
Full-fledged meat.
Oh yeah.
You can always barbecue vegetables and corn on the cob.
Yes. Yeah, we could do some. Well, that wouldn't be dairy. It's a tradition to eat dairy. Either way, this is the holiday that we're going to be celebrating in a couple of days. And we said it's we're memorializing. It's the day that we call the day of Kabbalat Torah, accepting the Torah. Why is that? Is there a question there? I'm sorry, I missed the question.
Can you increase the fire?
Yes, you're allowed to increase the fire. Decreasing is a much bigger issue than increasing. So, right. Well, yeah, because you're lessening the fire. You're lowering the fire. It's less of an issue than turning it off entirely, but for sure to increase is not a problem. I remember when my dad was a smoker back in the day. He quit smoking like 12 years ago, but I used to always remember like on the holidays, because you're allowed to smoke on the holidays as well. Because you're perpetuating the fire, but you're allowed to perpetuate fires.
One after the other.
Yeah. So that you could chain smoke. Yeah. So I remember like he would like give us his cigarettes, and we would go and stick it under the little blech that we would have with the gas operated fire, on the stovetop, and get the fire and get him a cigarette. And he would do a middle of the meal. He needs a cigarette. Can't talk to me.
Why is smoking not prohibited?
Why is smoking not prohibited?
General.
So like this.
Isn't that like killing yourself?
Like this.
Killing?
Yes, it is an act of killing. And we know that there's a law in the Torah, most probably from V'nishmartem od lenafshatechem, you should guard yourself to be healthy. So the question is, what does that include? So now there's a movement now trying to reassess the status of cigarettes. But we know that no one smokes cigarettes and dies on the spot unless you smoke a cigarette in a gas station or something like that, right? Smoking a cigarette is going to kill you.
Shabbos, you cannot start a fire. So.
Oh, right. Well, that's another issue. But for the health consequences of cigarettes, it's slow or cruel, and therefore the prohibition would not that would not prohibit someone from smoking, according to most opinions, because that's not putting yourself in actual immediate danger.
So each
individual cigarette is not.
That's right.
It's
As
a
opposed to
chronic illness.
no, I mean it's an accumulated. It's an
Yeah.
accumulated. Just like we say, you know
It's
what?
like high cholesterol.
Yeah, think about it that way. Could you have an omelet?
Yeah, eggs.
Yeah, because if you have a 3-egg omelet every day, well, you might have a high cholesterol or whatever. You know, can I eat it? Can I eat a big juicy burger if it's kosher? Even if it's kosher, it might be bad for you. You know, right? So this prohibition is being don't put yourself in immediate danger where you may die. So we have several halakha responsa that talk about, let's say, boxing. We know that there's been hundreds of people that actually died in a boxing ring. They were punched and knocked out, and they're dead. So that would be different because there's the immediate threat of actual loss of life.
Oh, so you can't be a boxer?
A Jew, well, yes, it seems like a Jew. If a Jew would be a boxer, would be.
I've never heard
Well,
of this.
well, have you seen any? Okay, except for Omri Caspi, have you seen any?
Jews.
A couple, but
Are there Jews?
Yeah.
Omri Caspi is in basketball.
So I once had a teacher, a speaker at Aish,
True. My
said
father used to box.
he said that you're Jewish when you realize what it means to be Jewish when you realize that you're more likely to own a sports team than to play on one.
Yeah.
That was the line.
So you're probably not allowed to skydive or things like that.
That's a good question. What about skydiving or something like that? Well, the question is what the numbers are. You know, we think it's dangerous, but sometimes
Yeah, but like
our
driving,
what about driving? Exactly, driving is a lot more dangerous than flying. You know, we associate danger not necessarily with the statistics of the probability of that actually killing us.
Are you allowed to own the boxing thing, though? If the people
That's the right question.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Could you be the promoter?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're allowed.
That's a good
Actually,
question.
you profit from it. It's either,
Yeah, you profit from death.
That's a good question.
well, but it's like,
I think we can find.
How about the gun manufacturers in Israel?
well, to defend. I mean, self-defense is
Yeah,
permitted.
self-defense is self-defense, right?
Well, I mean,
If you go in a
yeah,
shooting spree.
but I mean, if you have like a Jewish Texan, or
Let's
something-
settle down. We're not leaving this conversation for a while.
We won't tell them about the Cyprus Jewish Shooting Club.
Oh,
Choose with 22.
Juice
Your
is
brother
22.
does Glocks and locks. Right?
Yeah, bagels and Glocks.
Yeah.
That's what it is, bagels and Glocks.
I don't know.
Yeah. No. I'm not saying anyone should not have a gun, but I don't know anyone who's advertising on the front lawn that the owner is unarmed. Our neighborhood had an uptick in crime, unfortunately. So we had in one of the local synagogues, we had a CHL licensing course. We had a lot of people joined and signed up. Like I said, there's an interest for it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Either way, so that way smoking
So you
would
took
be
the
allowed.
course?
I did, yeah.
You did?
I don't have a gun with me, or actually a CHL. I'm still waiting for it to show up in the mail.
Well,
Keep waiting. I'm still waiting.
Oh yeah, it says like 60 days. Yeah, it's crazy.
I have an Uzi in my car.
That is actually legal.
Is it? An Uzi?
Yeah.
Only
gun.
only in Texas.
Full-size gun
We're
does
not,
not
we're
need
not
to be
from here.
But this is
so-
an automatic. This is a military grade. I mean, this is a fully automatic.
Weapons are not.
Yeah,
You don't have to register. They have to have a title, like a car. That's the only thing that an automatic weapon has to have. When you apply for a
I
license,
thought
it's
a
not a
fully
registration,
automatic
it's a title.
weapon you were not
I
allowed.
thought there was
to-
restrictions like the AK-47.
Now we're gonna have
Yeah,
in
anybody can
January.
own a
We're gonna have
full
open carry.
You just have to have a title. You have to apply for it.
January,
September.
It's September. Sorry, September.
September?
Maybe January.
Either way, there's to be open carry now. So, and these Texans will actually open carry.
Yeah,
No.
It's Texas. Everyone has a gun anyway.
Yeah,
Most
everybody has
concealed
weapons.
carriers
Joke.
will continue to conceal.
Huh?
Most concealed carriers will continue to conceal.
Because they probably got into the habit or whatever.
No, because you don't want to show everyone you have a pistol, so it makes you a target. If someone is actually going to rob the bank that you are
Yeah,
attending,
kill the
whatever,
guy with the gun
they're
first.
gonna- exactly. Yeah, obviously you'll have a redneck jerk that will make sure everyone
Show the
sees
big
your
gun.
but for the most
I know
There's-
several.
Yeah,
of
most
those.
people will still carry. I mean, conceal.
I know several of those. Either way, so this is the holiday. So what are we celebrating exactly over the holiday? We have, so we know that it's called the holiday of receiving the Torah. Now, what actually happened on the 6th day of Sivan? back in the day, in the year 1312, before the Common Era. Right, so we're going about 27 years ago. What did we memorialize? What did we receive? We received the scrolls. What did we get?
Moses came down with the 15 commandments.
Right. So,
Moses came down with the 15 commandments.
no, well, Moses didn't come down yet. Moses went up. So two significant events really happened on this day.
We fell asleep.
Well, that was the eve of, and that's why we stay up that night.
So you're talking about the day after.
But that day. So the night we were sleeping, and then we woke up, and we had this tremendous. So two things happened. Number one, we achieved prophecy, as it says very clearly in several places. Most notably, where it points it out the uniqueness in Deuteronomy chapter 4, but also in Exodus, where it describes a story, in Deuteronomy, where it repeats the story. It makes it very clear that the entire nation was there, and they heard the voice of God. They saw these incredible visions. Right? It was an entire nation of 603,550 adult males with the age of 20 and 60. So this is an enormous amount of people. And this is the one event that we use as the foundation of our faith, really. Torah makes it clear. It says, no one else has had this experience. This is the vision, this is the revelation that kicked off our religion. And yes, of course, part of that was receiving commandments. We know 10 of them on the mountain. Of course. And that was the beginning, or at least the acceleration, of our receiving the Torah. And of course, the 10 commandments, they encapsulate the entire Torah. They're a microcosm of the entire Torah. And in fact, even more precisely, we know that the Talmud says, very clearly, Rashi brings it down, that the first 2 commandments the Jewish people heard from God themselves. Everyone familiar with that?
Yeah, they jumped out.
And the Talmud says that they died. Mm-hmm. And how do we know the Talmud says that? Because
they asked Moses to go up.
And where is it? Where is it in the Talmud? That's absolutely right. Shabbat 88. We'll get to it.
87A, no?
Well, 87 is where it starts talking about it. And it says that they died, had to be resuscitated. This was a tremendous experience. The first 2 commandments they heard from God. Now, what's so special about the first 2 and not the first one? If they stopped after 2, why wouldn't they stop after 1? And if they were able to hear 2, why didn't they hear 3 or 4? Like, why is 2 the arbitrary number? Because just like we said that the 10 commandments are a microcosm of the entire Torah, the first 2 commandments are also a microcosm of the entire Torah. The first commandment is believe in God. Second commandment is don't believe in anything else. Essentially, that covers everything. And we say that when you do a positive mitzvah, right, it's a reaffirmation of commandment number 1. Right? You're doing something because God instructed you to do it. When you don't do a sin, when you withhold from doing a sin, you're reaffirming mitzvah commandment number 2. Don't do things that are contrary to that. Thus, we could say that the 248 positive mitzvahs are encapsulated with I am the Lord your God. The 365 negative commandments are encapsulated in don't have any other foreign gods before me. And thus, essentially, the Jewish people had to hear the entire Torah, at least the core of the entire Torah, from God himself. Thus, the first 2, they heard from God himself. The rest of them, even though they are also a microcosm of the entire Torah, and many commentators point this out, and they do all the mathematics and how it works and what it corresponds to and everything. But these 2 are the core, positive and negative, of this relationship.
How do you know they heard only the first 2 commandments?
I'm not sure if it's in the Talmud or if it's clear in the verses, or Rashi brings it down, so it's sourced somewhere.
Okay, because I thought they heard all the commandments.
I think the Ramban says that they heard all of them, or it's not so clear what they did or didn't hear.
Right?
To go back to the sources and tell you.
Okay.
Well, Ben, what does it say? Exactly. Yeah. Sham Tineit for us. That's right. Kibud far. just quoted the Talmud verbatim. Close enough.
Yeah.
But
And so, what was the answer?
so
Yeah, Mom.
either way, so these are the two major events, and we call it the receiving of the Torah because is it easier if I face and we call it the receiving of the Torah because that's when we started. And essentially, we actually start. If you want to actually split hairs, we started receiving the Torah earlier because they received the three mitzvahs were received even before the experience at Sinai. But either way, this is where they settled down and they started. They were actually by Mount Sinai for an entire year, actually 10 days short of a year. And that's where they had, of course, we know that the golden calf was there and that aftermath, but that's where they built the tabernacle. So they got all the mitzvahs for an entire year. They were studying at the foot of the mountain. So this is in a place. This is a location which is forever connected to the idea of Torah study. And we know that the Torah study for us Jews is something very important, very critical, very fundamental to our religion. It's been made very clear that this is where we became a nation. You know, it's not a coincidence that the element that we have of faith is linked to the element of Torah. Like this is so significant, and these two things were connected. It could have been just this experience of Mount Sinai and just the prophecy and fantastic, but for us, we know that this is connected to the Torah and to the study of the Torah and the receiving of the Torah, because the Torah is what's going to make us a nation. And throughout the generations, we have historical accounts from even non-Jewish sources that talk about the dedication the Jewish people had to Torah study. We're talking about thousands of years. It's not a new thing. You go to Israel today, and you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that, to large or even small or some band of extent, dedicate their lives to Torah study.
I thought we in Shalom Cyprus invented the Torah class. Didn't we?
Yeah, well, they took your
He took our idea.
Ben's mom was a founding matriarch. Right? So this is something that we've had now for 3,300 years, and has been the core of the nation. I like to say this as an example of kind of the Jewish attitude that we've had to Torah study. That Maimonides, as we all know, was the rational one. He was the one rabbi that got it. You know, that's like the philosophers love him because he was the one rabbi who really understood life. You know, it wasn't just one of those crazy. And he says, and he makes it very clear. He says, someone who studies Torah and expects others to support him, he's making a mistake and he's going to forget all his Torah. That's what he says. And you have to study Torah, of course, but you also have to spend time making a living.
He's a fool.
Huh?
He
says a lot of things. He goes very, very strongly against it. If you want to know where the source is, in the Pirkei Avot, in the chapters of the Fathers, where it says, don't make it a kardum lachborbo, don't take the Torah and make it into a shovel to dig with, nor a crown to gain glory from. So there he goes on a diatribe against people that say that we should study Torah and let everyone else take care of me. Right? Let my Torah study, let that do the work for me. Because then essentially you're turning the Torah into a pick or an axe or a hoe that's going to dig for you, and a crown to gain glory from.
He doesn't like that story of the fisherman in the other one.
Which story? Which fisherman?
You know, where the one fishes and the other one studies Torah. They make that little deal.
I don't know which story you're talking about, but he does bring a lot of other stories.
Really?
This is pretty much the story of Israel.
What? Two fish had an agreement?
I don't know. Are you talking about the one where you're going to catch a fish, so you can buy more fish?
No. There was
With the guy who bought the fish and had the diamond in it?
The fisherman story.
Like the fisherman's drowning.
No, not the fisherman are drowning. No, there's this one.
Let me tell what story he does bring.
One person was the fisherman. He did all the work, right? And the other guy did all the study. Now
They made
their
an agreement. It's called the Yisachar Zvulun agreement, where Yisachar Zvulun, the two brothers, one of them is dedicated to Torah study, one of them is the business mogul.
I don't think they were brothers.
Well-
Yaakov and Esau.
Well, that was the ideal, but unfortunately, it didn't work out like that. So, what does he say? How should one allocate the day? What do you think the proper allocation is, according to Maimonides, of Torah study versus work? What do you think, Jeff? What do you think? That's a fair breakdown.
Honestly, you're.
What makes sense to us?
100% work.
100%. But what do you think?
Oh, you're
what do you think
here,
Maimonides
so
would
there's
write?
What's the question again?
99% work, 1% choice.
What would Maimonides write? Like, what's a fair breakdown? Explanation. So, how much should someone work towards a livelihood, towards providing for the family, and how much should someone spend studying Torah? What do you think? And who wants to throw out? Remember, Ben, you know the number?
I'm going to guess a third, a third.
What's the last third?
I would assume that.
Yeah, a waking part is
the
50-50.
Is going to be your waking hours.
Yeah, waking hours is 50-50.
So he says like this. He says you have 12 hours to sleep and take care of all your recreation.
Well,
Okay.
Yes, and then the other
to sleep and
He was a
Everything.
slacker.
everything. No, 12 hours to sleep and to eat and to daven and to everything, and
Okay.
to deal with your kids and do bedtime and
We can't
whatever.
lump the davening with Thursday.
What?
We can't lump the.
No. We're talking about Torah study, like not prayer or liturgy or like that. And even though 12 hours left, it says you should spend 9 hours studying and 3 hours working. Jeff's face.
Well, when you're a doctor, I guess you can do that.
wait. How
When
many
you're
hours
a rabbi.
studying?
9 hours studying
Yeah.
and 3 hours working. And my money says not.
Not you. What do you call it? The paramedic thing.
Oh, the 9 days a month?
Yeah, he only works 9 days a month. I
So
can't get over that.
Maimonides is and he's writing this as law. He's saying like this is a very fair and ideal background for everyone. A breakdown of, and to us it's mind-boggling, of course, like you said, like 9 hours of study a year, if only most Jews would do.
I go crazy after 8 hours of work, so I can imagine 9 hours.
Well, maybe studying is more plentiful than work.
It is.
I've had enough school, so studying is.
Yeah, but yeah, you're studying Torah. Torah's entirely different. Well, either way, I think this kind of underscores the dedication or just the attitude the Jewish people have had towards Torah study. This is just one example.
So how did we come up with that number? We should just supposed to.
It's a good question. It's a very good question. But there's some great stories of the heroism of the great rabbis and how much they dedicated their lives towards Torah study and how much like Rabbi Akiva, that's the one story with the fish, right? The fish. Rabbi Akiva said if during the Hadrianic persecutions,
trying to find it. No, it wasn't
he
from
said,
Rabbi
Rabbi Akiva said that if you take a fish out of water, the fish is going to die. If you take a Jew out of Torah, the Jew's going to die. So he says, I don't care that the Romans, that the Hadrian says that if you study Torah, we're going to execute you. I don't care. Well, we're going to die regardless, right? So that's one example. We know that he was killed for teaching Torah. Another great example of kind of the attitude that the great sages have had towards Torah. We know the story of Rava. So there's this great rabbi in the Talmud. You find him in every 2 pages of the Talmud. You find Rava at least once, and he's teaching, he's lecturing, and there's this rusty knife on his table, and he doesn't realize it, and he's smashing his hands on the table. I guess it wasn't Shabbat, right? And he's lecturing, and he doesn't realize that his hand's just bleeding. Talmud says this crazy story. Because like he was so just taken by the Torah study that he didn't even notice it. He noticed it later, and then as he tended to it later. No, it just but the fact someone has nerve endings, it means that if your mind's not there, it doesn't hurt you. Just like if you would, I don't know.
So this story, the rabbi, European rabbi, he passed away I think 1 year or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Sephardic, and he was well known for studying all the waking hours.
Rabbi Vadi Yosef.
Yes, he passed away.
Yeah, 2012, 2013. Yeah.
And there's this story that he was a woman had a question about the get, so he was working on it, and he needed to find this book in his shelf. So he takes the stairs, he goes up, and then he falls. He breaks his hip. He cannot get up. So he calls 911. It's Europe, so I don't know if it's 911.
No,
he was.
Rabbi Vadi Yosef lived in Israel, but he was a rabbi. He was the rabbi of Cairo.
So
either way,
he was his hips. He couldn't move, and while he was there waiting in pain, he found the book that he needed on the bottom of the shelf. So he took it and he started reading until the ambulance came and he took him there. And he said after, "Why did you do that?" Well, because the woman that needed this information, she may not get the get if she doesn't have the information on time.
Yeah.
So with broken hip and everything. He was getting.
Yeah, but someone like Rabbi Yosef, like this is a man who's he was the chief rabbi of Israel as well, from 1963 to 1970. Because Israel chief rabbis, they're in 10-year increments, 10-year terms. In fact, his son is the current Sephardic chief rabbi. All of his sons are massive, massive scholars. And he wrote, I don't know how many, but he must have written 100 books like on scholarship. But Rabbi Yosef, he knew verbatim by heart thousands of books. Like it's just insane. Like it's just he knew it word for word. You're reading you word for word verbatim. Like this dedication that people have. Obviously, you probably helped if you're a genius to begin with a photograph from memory. That would probably help.
He was almost like Ben 2.0.
So that's that. So what I wanted to do now, this is the event that kick-started our dedication to the Torah study. So what I wanted to do is to kind of maybe go through some of the sources that talk about kind of the importance and why we're doing it. And I feel like it's important for us to realize that something that our nation has been so dedicated towards for so many millennia, there's got to be a reason why. It's not possible that the smartest people in the world, or arguably, of the smartest people in the world, the Jews, would waste so much precious time for thousands of years studying ancient documents. That doesn't make sense. It shouldn't make sense, right? If you see a phenomenon that's so widespread that some of the most intelligent people in the world are dedicating so much time towards what we maybe at first glance would consider to be really archaic and irrelevant texts, I think it begs the question, what's the deal? Why the dedication? What do they find in the pages and the C's of the Talmud that's so life-changing that makes them want to dedicate their lives towards it? So when I prepared this presentation, I had a very ambitious goal. My goal was to find 10 different, distinct, each one distinct reasons why people study Torah. Not people observing the mitzvahs, but just actual study of Torah. And I had 7. I was trying to figure out if I could push it to 10. I ended up with 17. I have 17 different and distinct reasons why people do it, and why we find, Vehidita bo yom v'layla as a verse in Scripture to study Torah day and night. Like, why? Why should we study Torah day and night? Why is it so important? And of course, we're not trying to say that this is the only thing that's important. As we mentioned when I spoke, I think it was last time or the time before, that the Talmud also says that if someone studies Torah but doesn't do kindness, well, they don't believe in God. So someone who doesn't do anything but Torah study, and the Torah study makes them into someone who's more arrogant, right? Well, then maybe that's a bad thing, of course. And we have the Talmud, of course, famous Talmud that says that some people, the Torah becomes Samachayim, and some becomes, thank you, which means for some people it's the elixir of life, Torah study, and for some people it's poison, or the elixir of death, right? Because yes, there is a certain measure of danger, but it's something so powerful and so transcendental and so transformative for people in so many different ways. And so I want to go through some of the sources that talk about what happens when someone studies Torah and how does that affect their lives, and maybe for us to gain some insight as to why the obsession, and to also maybe hopefully present the upcoming holiday in a clearer light. Like, what's the celebration? We're celebrating receiving instructions of God, of Torah that we study. Okay, well, how can we make that as meaningful as possible? What do y'all say? Should we start? Reason number 1?
Yeah.
I'm gonna start from the easy one. What's the easiest reason why we study Torah?
So in order,
Go ahead.
In honor of Letterman, can we do like the top 10?
Top 10.
To understand God.
Well, that's to understand God. Maybe let's start with the simplest reason. I think probably the simplest reason, and that's probably because it's a mitzvah. There's hundreds of mitzvahs in the Torah. We shake a lulav and we eat matzah and we light the Shabbat candles and we put a mezuzah on the door. We do a lot of things, and we study Torah because that's one of the mitzvahs in the Torah.
Oh, but that's a circular argument.
It's like parenting.
Well, yes, okay. But if I ask someone, why are you studying Torah? I think a very fair answer could be, this is a great mitzvah. In fact, it's a mitzvah. We say
that's
it.
like, I study Torah because it says in the Torah.
I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just trying. Yes, of course. If this was a logical argument to try to say why someone should study Torah, that alone would not be enough. Of course, I realize that makes sense. But we're saying when someone realizes the Torah is true, and the Torah is, and they want to understand all the different elements of why they study Torah, that would be, I think, one of the just same reason why you have mezuzah on your door. You have mezuzah on your door.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because
It's a circular argument. So what? Who cares about the
I
Torah?
don't know why. It's a
Okay, it's
circular-
not. Okay. Okay, but prove that to me. That's the same question you're asking me essentially. I'm not trying to prove anything.
Right,
I'm just
yeah.
saying that's why. Now, interestingly, and I feel like Ben kind of gave me a glance. We don't know, but the mitzvah of studying Torah is actually not explicit in Torah. Right? That verse that I quote, I said it's in Scripture. I didn't say it's in the Torah because it's actually the 8th verse after you finish the Torah, which to me indicates that the Torah wanted to say it so much, but for whatever reason couldn't say it in the actual 5 books of Moses. So right away at the onset of the book of Joshua, it says we could study Torah day and night. But it's hinted many, many times in the Torah itself. And we know that some of the commentators, some of those who organized the list of 613, bring it as one of the 613 mitzvahs. And the Talmud says the question, why the greatest mitzvah of all? Why is that not plastered on every page? Every page there's a mitzvah to do this, to do that, and the other, and then study Torah and repeat it 10 times. We're told not to speak Lashon Hara 22 times. We're told to go in the ways of God 8 times. Let it say, study Torah 50 times, or at least once, clearly. That's the Talmud's question. And the answer Talmud says, I think, is mind-blowing. It says, well, it is obvious, of course, but don't murder is, I think, also obvious. Maybe it wasn't at the time, right? But a lot of things are obvious that are spelled out, right? Maybe it is obvious. We know some things in the Torah, it's just self-understood. You're supposed to understand in your own. I think it's a good argument. But listen to what the Talmud says. Talmud says it's crude, it's crass, it's unbefitting for the Torah itself to demand that people study it. And here's an example. It says, just like a couple, husband and wife, it's not befitting for them to demand physical intimacy. That's not. There's a way to do it. You could drop hints. That's fine. That's encouraged. Not straight up. You know. That's in fact, it's an actual law. With the laws of marital intimacy, it talks about how to go about that. So that's what it says. Okay. Now, what is this telling us? Our relationship with Torah study is similar to our relationship that we have with our spouses. The most intimate of relationships. That's what it's saying, right? That's the argument. And we find that again and again. We find, for example, we know that man was all alone, and God says, let me make you a woman. And it's not good for man to be alone. I'll make him a helper. So perhaps we could say that, when the Torah crafted man and a spouse, that's a helper. Maybe the Torah is, man alone is also. A man alone, it's not good for man to be alone. What happens when you have man dropped into the world without any instruction? What happens? What do they look like? You know what they look like? Savages. No, if you were to dial back the clock in a time where morality wasn't as ubiquitous as it is today, people were savages. Like murder was commonplace, right? Rape was no big deal. Go read about what life was like thousands of years ago, even hundreds of years ago. That's what man looks like without being harnessed. Man's no more than an animal without the Torah. Perhaps this is the lesson, right? Man needs helpers for a man to be great in life or even to be good in life. Right? They're going to need to have instruction. Just like it's not good for a man to be alone without a wife, it's not good for a man to be alone without Torah. If you have no form of instruction, if you don't have guidance in how to maximize your life, how to live like a human, not like an animal, you may in fact end up like an animal, unfortunately. And you know what does the Torah say? Like the Torah says, be a human. More than anything else, I would say the Torah is telling us to not act like an animal. I'll say that's one of the overriding lessons of the Torah. An animal cannot say no to its instincts. It can't do it. Some humans can't do that either. The Torah is again and again and again rehashing this point again and again. Say no to your instincts. You want something? Okay, no, you can't because it's either it's not kosher, because it's Shabbat, or because of whatever. We're constantly being told you're a human. Right? You don't just do what you want. You are grounded. Yeah, and to me, like this is an eye-opening way to just look at what Torah is. And I think we can make the argument. I think this is a true argument that a lot of the Torah lessons, thankfully, became widespread across entire societies. And I think today, you go most places in the world, you won't encounter the same people that Abraham encountered, 3,800 years ago. We see Abraham had to tell Pharaoh that his wife was his sister, because otherwise they would have killed him. That's an insight into what life is like in a time where the Torah lessons and the Ten Commandments, if you will, were not universally accepted. I think today it's pretty much universally accepted. Pretty much, not entirely, but the basic idea is that we taught the world. We taught the world. This is us. We're the first ones. We're way ahead of the curve. Right? We taught the world these lessons. Right? That we could see today how it has ensured that the humans behave like humans. So I think it's a good point to realize that yes, the Torah helped us, of course, become humans, but it really helped the entire world. And we talk about Tikkun Olam and fixing the world and how the Torah is the recipe for fixing the world. I think we could say that the world is much more fixed than it was thousands of years ago. Either way, that's the way to that's I think number one. We'll start with number one. It's I think probably a simple one. We study it because of Torah study, but also that kind of opens up an insight as to what the relationship that we have with Torah. What would the Jewish people be like without it? That kind of is a good way for us to really appreciate some of the insights and the themes of the holidays. Okay, so if that's number one, it's a mitzvah. What's number two? It's fantastic. What's the content matter of the Torah? What does the word Torah even mean? Instructions. Right? So if you want to have the instructions, you want to read the book, you want to read the manual. And I like to say that when you open up a toaster oven, it has a big signs warning. Make sure you read the instructions because death or loss of limb can occur if you operate it in the wrong way. Toaster oven, yeah. Like I actually saw yesterday. We have this bread maker, fantastic little contraption. You put in the recipe the night of, and then you wake up in the morning. There's fresh, like an amazing homemade bread. But one of the pieces came out, and I looked inside of it, like one of the cover of the flap. I looked inside, I see like 1,000 wires. It looks like one of those movie scenes where you have to cut one of the wires, or else the bomb's gonna blow up. So I was looking like.
Have you heard of the Darwin Awards?
Or the Ig Nobel Prize ones? The IG ones? IG Nobel Prize? Or the guy was the silliest. Anyway. So that's, and I was thinking, like, how complex is this machine? That look how many wires it has in it. Now, if we're given, and this is an argument that's been made many times, the more sophisticated the machinery gets, the bigger the instruction manual. So if you have, let's say, a little Bluetooth speaker set, then it's maybe two or three pages, or like a little flip card. But if you're get delivered a brand new Boeing 787 Dreamliner, I'm sure it comes.
Amazon.
I'm sure.
From Amazon. Yeah.
No, if you bought 2-day shipping, if you bought that, I'm sure it comes with an engineer and a library of instructions.
It's typically a room.
A room, yeah. That's what I would assume, right?
Yes.
I don't
I have
know.
friends who work at Boeing.
Huh?
It is.
I have friends who work at Boeing.
So I'm sure that's true. No, I'm sure they deliver them with instructions on how to operate them. I'm sure like the little Embraers, R7 CR17s, those little planes that fly to Canada. That's more of a booklet. But the big the Airbuses, the A380s, like these are sophisticated. And I'm sure if you go to the
But it's not always size.
no, but it's complexity.
Yeah, complexity. That's the
Right.
I mean, my microchip, the manual, it's pretty big.
Right, but I would say if you were to go onto like the International Space Station, I can imagine that the manual and the team of engineers that are there making sure everything works well, is enormous. So by that argument, we say that there's the world, and the world is infinitely more complex than any of those things. And the Torah is the manual. The Torah is the manual, and the mitzvahs are the instructions. And what makes the world even more complex or more dangerous is the fact that the world looks, at least at plain sight, as being not so complex. Like a lot of people live their lives and say, like, this is just a wonderful place to hang out for 70, 80 years. But in reality, the Torah tells us that no, we're here on a mission. And we're here because we have a soul, we have the body, and we have opportunities to become great. And we have the potential of regression and becoming terrible. That's what life really is. It's this greatest game of chess. Not chess, but it's this greatest game of opportunity and consequences and responsibilities that could ever be imagined. But unfortunately, some people just imagine that this is just a nice arena to survive and have fun for 80, 90 years. So that's why we have the Torah. And the Torah gives us instructions. And you know what? When we read that, like when we look at the Torah, we think of like, oh gosh, we have to break our teeth now in Hebrew. Like, how do you read this? There's no nekudot, there's no dots in the Torah scroll. And why would they make it without dots? Like that's what we think. But in reality, like this changes everything. Like to us now, we're not just studying some laborious, arduous, ancient, archaic, arcane book of instruction. Rather, we are we are being taught by the Almighty, Creator of heaven and earth, how to maximize our life, how to accomplish the most, how to have the highest levels of pleasures possible, how to actually utilize the world for all it is designed to be. I think that to radically change our opinion, and that's what we do. This is the holiday that we celebrate that. Like, imagine you had, I'm trying to think of a bigger example, but imagine, I don't know, you got the Xbox, right? On Hanukkah, you get the Xbox, but you don't know how to plug it in, or you don't know how to turn it on, or you don't know how to hook it up to the screen, or you don't know how to work it, and you don't know how to hook up the multiplayer game, and then someone comes in and says, let me teach you how to do it, and he shows you how to do it. Like that would just be incredible joy. And of course, an Xbox, that's a lot of fun for a kid or an adult that has it, right? But if you were to just magnify that to cosmic scale, that's what the Torah was. It was unlocking this tremendous potency of life, of existence, of the world, of humanity. That's what it was. And that's why it's a day of greatest celebration, because this is the day where we started getting some of the codes and some of the instructions. So yes, on one end, we think of instructions as being, oh, you got to do that, have to do that. But on the other hand, there's the other flip side where we look at these instructions as being each a golden opportunity. This is more fun. This is more pleasure. This is maximization of life. And I would say that that's a very good argument for reason number 2 of studying Torah. That's to get the instruction. So it's a mitzvah, of course. It's a very important mitzvah, very essential mitzvah, mitzvah that's going to bring us to other mitzvahs. No doubt. It's instructions, and these instructions have to be cherished because it's not just instructions that are orders from the dictator, but they're instructions for us on how to make our lives better. And number 3, I'll say, and I'll start with the Talmud in the book of Sanhedrin. The Talmud says that there's 3 mitzvahs that are scenarios, lo haya velo atid lihiyot. Never happened, never will happen. What are these 3 mitzvahs? The wayward and rebellious son of Deuteronomy, the Ir Nidachat, the city that this entire city has adopted idolatry, and lastly is Tsaras on the house, leprosy, the spiritual leprosy where splotches start appearing on your home.
I don't know what you said. These are 3 things that will never happen again.
No, never happened, never will happen.
Never has happened and never will happen.
Exactly.
So, like the city of Saddam.
Well, Sodom wasn't a Jewish city, and Ir Nidachas, a city that has entirely adopted idolatry, can only be a Jewish city.
So it has to be a Jewish city.
Yeah, it never happened, never will happen.
So what were the 3 again? The city and
The wayward and rebellious son.
what does that mean?
Wayward and rebellious son. It means a 13-year-old boy between the age of 13 and 13 to 3 months who steals money from his parents and uses that to buy meat and wine, and he eats the meat that's uncooked, or not fully cooked, and drinks the Italian wine in bad company in one gulp, and has someone, witnesses that see him and warn him not to do it, and the parents choose to bring him to court. They give him lashes. The kid does it again. They bring him to court and they execute him. That's a shortened version of the requirements. But this is an example.
Statistically, yeah.
But remember, this is also both parents have to opt to bring him in voluntarily. And the Talmud says, well, both parents have to be the same height, and they have to have the same voice, and they have to look the same. It's clearly, you read the instructions, it's not designed to happen, right? Clearly.
And then the third one was what?
When Saras appears in the house.
That's in the Parsha.
I said all 3 of them were in the Parsha. They're all 3
You said they didn't happen.
They never happened, but the Torah tells us what to do when they do happen, even though they never happened. What's the obvious question? Drum roll, please. Why does it tell us what to do when a situation happens, and then we know that the situation actually never happened, never will happen?
Wait, so Saras was never on someone's house?
Right. It was on
It
the
was
garments,
on their clothes,
on the
skin,
on their
skin.
person, but not in the house. So the Talmud says, Lama nichtav. Why was it written? We should have 610 mitzvahs. Shorten it. Go easy on us. Let's have 610. Why do we need 613 mitzvahs? Just give us 610 and that should be enough. Says the Talmud, Derosh v'kabel sechar. Study and receive reward. On face value, this means that, listen, the Torah guarantees reward for every good deed, including Torah study, including any mitzvah that you do. So the Torah says, you know what, this is something that never happened, but study it. I'll just give you some extra stuff, extra credit. That's what it seems like. But on a deeper level, we find tremendous lessons that are applicable to our lives. For example, we know that the Wayward Rebellious Son, that is an entire book on pedagogy, on parenting, where it goes into the whole relationship of the children and the parents and what causes kids to listen and what causes kids not to listen. And I know I have a friend who wrote an entire article taking these laws and deriving important lessons in parenting from it. And that's reward. Because, yes, it's masked as instructions, but we know that these events never actually happened. But the lesson is still there. Similarly, I have a class online, if you want to listen to it, where I talk about the splotches on the house and what the lesson is. When in fact, there we find Rashi very famously tells us that the reason why that there were splotches on the house was because when the Jews came into Israel and they were incumbents there. We know that there was a war, and some guy would move into his new house, and the previous owner, they heard the Jews were coming, so they hid the money and the gold and the silver and the jewels and the diamonds behind the stones. So the Torah says, you know what? I'll create. God says, so to speak, I'll make splotches in your house. And then you have to pull away the stones, and then you'll discover the gold. So that's an absolute bizarre.
So he's doing what a favor for you?
That's what it sounds like. But then we actually read the Talmud, says it never happened. So you have this insane, I guess, oxymoronic reality where the Torah tells us that what to do when this happens, why it happens, because there's gold in there, but actually never happened.
So it never did happen.
Never did happen. So why would you tell me why something happens and then tell me actually it never happens? So there's room. I gave almost an entire class of this idea because yes, there's also a lot of lessons that we can learn out of it.
Maybe simulating a different possibility.
So or maybe the lesson is that when bad things happen to you, oh gosh, I have to pull down my house. It's actually for a good reason because there's gold and silver behind it. Maybe that's the lesson. And maybe that's the deriving it, studying it, and gaining reward. You know, when we find there's hundreds of mitzvahs that we study about that we don't actually fulfill. There's entire sections, orders of Mishnah that are not applicable to us at all. And I know I have a lot of friends that study the laws of sacrifices and all the details and all the different kinds of the tens of different kinds of sacrifices and how it's done and what the Kohen Gadol does in Yom Kippur. And all these laws that will never apply to them because even if the temples were built tomorrow, they're not a Kohen. So why are they studying that? And we study the laws of agriculture in Israel that don't apply to us, and we study the laws that apply to women only. We study the laws that apply to Levites only. We study the laws that apply to kings only. We study the laws of jurisprudence that only apply when the temples is existing and the Sanhedrin is in session. We study all these things that are not relevant to us. So it's not just about instructions. Yes, there's the mitzvah. But if it's all about instructions that are practical and applicable to us in our day-to-day life, well, then you wouldn't do that. Perhaps there's an entire other element where there's studying it for the sake of reward. Now, what that reward can mean the spiritual reward or it can mean practical reward, where even if you study something which is not relevant to you, the underlying lessons can potentially be relevant to you. Or, like we have the Talmud says, that if someone studies the laws of an Olah is a kind of sacrifice. If you study the laws of the Olah, the Talmud says is that it's as if you fulfilled the mitzvah of an Olah. Thus, it's possible that via actual study, we can fulfill mitzvahs, or at least spiritually, that we couldn't have done otherwise. But either way, there's this idea of reward, of benefiting from the actual study. And we'll find a little bit later, we'll break down some of the different benefits. So you mentioned you get close to God. Well, that's a benefit. You're rewarded because you have an outcome, a positive outcome that you gain from the Torah study. Right? That's tangible. It's possible that when you study Torah, you get finer characteristics. You're finer midos, as we say, character traits. And it's possible when you study Torah, you become sharper, more intelligent. Actually, it's not possible. It's most assuredly you would sharpen your mind. And in fact, that leads us to number 4. So now we're going to unbundle some of the benefits of Torah study. And that is to sharpen the mind and hone and empower the soul. We find the question that we're asking tonight was asked before. We find that in the introduction to Sefer HaChinuch, which literally means the book of education, which is a book of apocryphal authorship written in the 13th century. In the introduction, the author, whose name was Rabbi Aaron Halevi, asked, Rabbi Aaron Halevi, you Halevi also? No, so you couldn't have been the author. He asked the question, why do we have such a precious Torah, such an exhaustive Torah? Why do we have Torah? Basically, same question that we asked today. And he says something fascinating. He says, the Almighty created animals. Animals are instinctual. Animals respond to instinct. They're 100% body, 100% material. They cannot overcome that. They cannot do anything above what they're pre-programmed to do. As we mentioned earlier, they cannot say no to their desires. That's one class of creation. God created angels. Angels are 100% intellect. They cannot choose to be anything else. They cannot choose to be anything but 100% rational. They cannot be influenced by a body or bodily forces. They cannot. An angel cannot have a temptation. It's not possible. They don't have the same physiological reality that would enable a temptation. And then there's this third creature. That's humans. And we're half animal, half angel. We have the instinct. We are pre-programmed. We are driven by our physical. Yet we have the potential of the soul. The soul's compared to the angels. And we have this ability to overcome it. Thus, we're in constant conflict. Not to be confused with constant contact. Something else. We're constantly in conflict because we have these two sparring, warring, divergent, opposite, polar realities that exist within us at all times. And we're being pulled this way and that way, and we have to, thus free choice, etc. Now, if we were to just project into the future, we take a look at what's the trajectory of man. Man starts off life as being almost entirely body. Almost entirely. A small child is essentially like an animal. Some kids actually eat like animals, but essentially because they cannot do anything that's against their instinct. If their instinct is to cry, then they'll cry. Nothing you can do to make them to stop. Maybe you could change their instinct by giving them a candy and stop crying. But they're entirely selfish. They want something that has to be their way. That's the way children start off. And as they grow up, hopefully they mature and they become more of a human, more balanced in this relationship. But if we don't tamper with it, if we don't influence it at all, the victor at the end of the process is always going to be the body. Why? Because the body is pole position. The body is the first instinct, the knee-jerk reaction, the muscle memory, whatever metaphor you want to use. The body is in the lead, always. How do we change that? How do we make sure that our intellectual, our spiritual side has a fighting chance? You know what we do? We study Torah. When you study Torah, right, you are essentially trying to link your brain, like what you said, to God's brain. This is the way I think, right? And that's obviously pure intelligence. You're latching your human intelligence into that. And you're trying to rework your mind and try to acclimate your mind and try to understand God's mind. What happens? You got to stress, you got to strain, you got to sharpen, you got to hone your own mind. You're strengthening your soul. You're strengthening the side of this conflict that you want to win. Thus, even if it's not an instructive, and it's not about the mitzvah, it's about your life, you need a pencil sharpener for your mind. Nothing makes your mind as potent, as powerful, as strong as Torah study. Nothing. And I could like think about it this way. You think of I could go to a divergent tangent here and spend another half hour on this particular one, which I don't want to do. But I used to make the argument that right now in Israel there's a big political quagmire. It's really been festering for a while with the yeshiva students in Israel. Because many yeshiva students go to army, but most of them don't. So there's this deep and very sensitive debate that has been brewing lately between, is it fair, is it just, should one mother have to worry about her kid in combat, and should another mother not have to worry? Now that's a very it's a very important debate that exists in Israel, and I'm not taking a side on either, taking a position on either side of the matter. But
it's not now. It started in '48.
Well, it didn't really start. Well, it reached a crescendo a couple of years ago, really. Shivayon banetel means that is it fair that some people or some young people, they contribute to the country, to the state, to the Medina, and some don't. That's a very it's a very hard question to try to whittle out of. It's a very important question. I wanted to say, like, my philosophy was, we'll talk about this a little later, but these yeshiva students, I spend time in yeshivas in Israel, and I've met people whose minds were so sharp, so potent. Like, these were intellectual titans. These were people that were of the 1% of 1% of intelligence. Now, of course, I would assume that most people were born with a certain edge intellectually. We're Jews, brilliant people are a dime, bless you, are a dime a dozen amongst the Jewish people. But you see people via the Torah study. They spend years sharpening the mind, like being totally entrenched in Talmudic dialogue, which is back and forth, and but not only that, and they get into the commentaries, and they're getting deeper and deeper and deeper, and they strain their mind and sharpen it to such a degree that these are people that are literally, these are geniuses that have the ability to analyze and assess critical information very, very, very fast. Go ahead. Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt that these students can contribute to the military. That wasn't a doubt. My solution, this is my solution. Let me get to that solution. Some of them maybe have good muscles also, so they could be in the front lines, right? My point is that I think that they could contribute. The argument of them not contributing, I think that would be quieted if there was some sort of program, which I dream of, which is probably never happened, where now remember, like, most, you guys went to college, right? How many hours a week are you actually studying? Like, straining your brain studying. Yeah, but study. But I'm talking about straining your brain, like actually squeezing out your brain to its fullest extent. I would argue that most people have never done that in their lives. To actually think so hard that your brain hurts, like your head hurts, you have a headache.
You think too little of humanity.
Well, maybe a lot of people do. I say most people. I think that's a fair argument. I've never done that. Yeah, these people are doing it 12 hours a day. These are people that are hone their mind to such a degree that they could, they could. So what's my plan? To develop these truncated courses in physics, mathematics, and whatever during the 3 weeks of the summer break that they have from yeshiva and the 4 weeks that they have over Pesach, and use that to tackle humanity's biggest problems. Essentially, take this potent group and have them just tackle some of the greatest mathematical problems, issues in biology, and and climate and finance and whatnot and mathematics. Let these people do it because these are the people that are best suited to do it. This is what they do. Like, this is what they do. They just need to have the background. I don't have the background. But they're used to acquiring and incorporating enormous amounts of information, very very fast. To do 12, 15-hour days, bombard them, they just soak it all up, and booyah, you have now solutions to all your biggest problems. And then you have contributions. That's my idea. You guys like it?
4 hours. Thumbs up.
Not 4 hours. No, 9 hours a day.
Well, most of these things that you suggest also require people study for 10, 12 hours a day to solve problems in physics,
Okay.
economics, and so on.
Okay.
Well, what do they do after they're done the yeshiva? Don't they go out and do
No, but
something?
I think the interesting, the intellectual question is whether this is a property of Torah or anyone studying for 12 hours archaeology. Would,
Well, not archaeology. No, archaeology is no, not archaeology, but some other science. Yeah, maybe.
No, I mean,
You said archaeology?
Archaeology.
Archaeology. No one stresses their brain with archaeology. This is all science. It is. Most of the time, they're just chipping away at
No experimental, theoretical archaeology, perhaps.
whatever.
Well,
Say mathematics or
pick that.
physics.
well, that's mine, but yeah, I mean, mathematics, for example.
Math is awesome.
I listen,
I don't think in a sound.
and I do agree. Like I said, if someone spends their time playing chess, I think that would also help them be more intellectually grounded. I think that's a good argument.
You mentioned a property which is very important. I think it's critical. It's just to be able to ingest a lot of information and put it together and quickly realize of patterns and big pictures and so on. Just won't
And
give you
compare,
that.
right. So yes,
No,
but it might help you a little bit.
Yeah, I think we retired our
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry.
My fault. Apology.
Really?
What if I forget to eat?
just eat one grape and then
And then
that'll
we'll
trigger the whole.
have somebody.
Oh,
Why was I getting this? Oh, now I remember.
Yeah. So, but
Yeah.
and you know what? Let me tell
No,
you
the
something.
Torah. I mean,
Let me tell you something very, very cool. We have, I feel like science, just that word science. How does someone who has 1,000% faith in God, not faith, belief, knowledge in God, what do they view science as?
Well, it depends on who you ask. I got different answers from different people. 100%.
Okay, so if you would ask me, what would I say?
They would see science as an explanation
God's
of
handiwork.
creation.
God's handiwork. Right? I think that's very fair. Right? And thus, essentially, Torah and science are parallels, that they're both things that we can encounter that originate by God. So I would agree with you 1,000%.
Yeah, in science, you look at, for example, energy is conserved. You don't ask why. Energy is conserved.
And a lot of times in the Torah, it is what it is. You're presented with data that is it. And then you have to deconstruct it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to there's some room for your own creativity to shine.
My question is, and this is to challenge.
And Maimonides, by the way, which is a little bit later on, but Maimonides, when he says, "How do you achieve love of God?" Which to us, love of God is it's got to be the hardest thing for us to imagine. Like, just God Himself, just to conceptualize the idea is a hard thing to do. And love is an emotion, so how are we going to bring that down to an emotion? Maimonides addresses this question. He says, you know what you have to do? You cannot try to love God Himself because you can't even think about God Himself. That's a reality that's beyond the capacity of someone that's finite like us. However, the Torah and science those are things that are kind of these intermediaries. Not intermediaries. That's a bad word. But these are God's
Channel.
thoughts. These are God's handiworks that have this infinite quality of complexity that when those things that we can delve into will bring us to an emotional love of God. I agree with you 1,000%. I think science is also, the problem is that the scientists kind of hijack science as
Well, I mean,
I don't know if it's a problem or not.
If you talk about 50 years ago, then there was this big fight. But now most of,
Maybe yes, maybe no, but
National Academy of Science released a document. Science and religion are not that far apart, and they don't talk about the same thing. So we're cool.
Yes.
That's what the national science.
I'm cool as well. Like I said, so to me, science is God's handiwork. I think it's
No, but my question was, because I heard this a couple of times actually. If you understand Torah, the logic that you can develop in your brain is more than anything that you can do. Is there a source for this claim, or is just
the what?
saying that if you study Torah, you become sharper than studying anything else, or if you understand the logic of
me,
the Torah?
it's not even a question.
Right, but the question is,
Well,
we can speculate and argue because
Yeah,
this is
well-
the manual for the universe. Then it's source for this.
Well, but this is remember this is going to be objective. I'm sorry, it'll be subject. What an objective source.
Well,
for
my
something
question is,
objective.
yeah.
Well, so this is what I found. The source that I quoted from the 13th century, from Rabbi Aaron Halevi, he says that this is the best method of sharpening the mind. I think he would agree that there are other methods to sharpening the mind that would also be useful, but this is the best. That's a nice source. But I think my exposure to Torah has been greater than my exposure to science. So I'm obviously biased in this, but it's not. I'm saying it's. I don't think it's even close. I really don't. I really don't.
My exposure has been beyond.
Well, there you go. So
No, but if you really believe the Torah is the word of God,
Yeah.
and I do believe, and God is way more infinite than anything that we can create, including science. So
Well, we
it
can
makes
create
sense
science.
that,
we can create science. We can observe science. We can understand
You can
science.
reveal science.
Yeah.
But not
We can
create.
discover.
What do you mean by create?
We're working within a
So
fixed.
this is again a misunderstanding of what science is about. In science, we don't really discover how things work.
We reveal it.
We observe it. We observe it.
No, we create
We
models.
understand it.
We create models of them. We can create an equation that describes something in the real world. But that's not how the real world is. It's just an abstraction, a construction, a mathematical construction of how the thing works. We create models for the universe, and we never know if those models are correct or not. So it is really a creative thing trying to reproduce observables. That's what it is, essentially. And people tend to believe that if a scientist says something and it's coming from me, then it must be true.
But I think if the science is in the Torah, when we reveal the science that's in the Torah.
That means the science that is in the Torah.
Your Big Bang Theory, described in the Torah, right?
Well,
In the Zohar.
and also I'm saying Torah's undefeated. It took 3,000 years for science, quote unquote, to agree to the very first word of the Torah. You know that, right? Science, like
We discussed about this.
I don't know if we discussed this. I don't know if we discussed it with you guys, but the first word of the Torah makes a bold claim that only recently, relatively,
50 years.
yes, science has unanimously accepted. And before that, it was almost unanimously disregarded.
2/3.
Or right, it depends how far back you go. But the Greeks disagree with. They had the turtles upon turtles upon turtles, right? The idea of an infinite world universe was very popular for a very long time. But Torah was undefeated. So yeah, but I'm not going to disagree with you. I think that science, and then we'll get to this a little bit later on if we actually get to it. The idea, I love that move. The idea of science also being a way to connect. But I think that if if we're going to use the just what we observe, I would say the vast majority of scientists don't believe in God, or at least the majority.
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes. Most
Right. So clearly, studying science alone may sharpen your mind, but that's not going to. But the difference is how is the science? There's no signature, God's signature, so to speak, on the observable signature, right? Or empirical signature.
I mean,
It's there, but it's not. But you can't deny it.
I mean, it's this unbelievable thing that we as humans can develop the tools like math in order to describe the universe. I mean, that's a coincidence that most scientists would consider to be like an amazing thing. How is it possible that in evolution that's supposed to create humans and so on? But then there's still this. How is it possible that those humans that evolved from something have the capacity of creating math to describe the universe and question about the universe? That's of course an unanswered question in terms of science.
How would evolution produce the human mind?
Well, first is one the whole issue of evolution,
yeah.
But the second one is why we could be just conscious people about ourselves and so on, but why is the universe based on things that can be described by mathematical means, and we have the tools to describe those? It could be that they are not, but there's this very strange coincidence that any reasonable scientist won't be able to answer. But yeah.
Either way, I think I agree to your point, the core point, and that is that science also can do that, and I think chess can, and other things can on a smaller scale. Okay, number 5, which is 5A, B, and C. Go ahead. To sharpen and hone your mind and take your brain and put it into the greatest pencil sharpener for the brain.
A lot of stuff.
Right. So yeah, exactly. These things. Yeah. There's a whole section there I skipped. Go ahead. I skipped an entire section, which would have taken us till like 11. I don't think we got to 17 today, but either way.
So number 1 was because it was commanded to us.
Well, it's a mitzvah to study Torah. There's instructions. There's reward. It sharpens a brain. Let's go to number 5. To fend off the Yetzer Ra. Okay, I got 4.
I was trying to.
I can share with you the
4.
Yeah, I
The
can.
first 4.
It's a mitzvah. It's instructions. To receive reward and to develop, sharpen your mind. Number 4 is to fend off the Yetzer Ra. Yetzer. Number 5. Sorry. Yetzer Ra is the evil inclination. What is the evil inclination? Evil inclination is what we say in the Torah.
It's kind of what you touch on number 4.
Well, not really. I would say number 4 is more of on a just life path kind of discussion, as opposed to number 5 is an actual tool or tactic or strategy that you use in your day-to-day interactions with your evil inclination. So this evil inclination, what do we know about it? Well, no. Let's just take the word evil inclination. What do we know about it? Bad. It's evil, right? It has the word evil in its name, or bad, right? Of course, it's right. Mm-hmm. What else do we know about it? It's an inclination. It inclines you to do some bad stuff. Vayar Elokim et kol ma she'asa v'hine tov ma'od. Verse in Genesis. The Almighty sees everything that He did, and behold, it is exceedingly good. Not just good, it's super good. Says the Midrash, Tov, when it says that it's good, that is a reference to the good inclination. Yetzer Tov. When it says exceedingly good, Tov me'od, ze Yetzer Ra. This is the Yetzer Ra. This is the evil inclination. Thus, what we view as evil, according to Jewish literature, is exceedingly good. Why? Because if we did not have this force within us, our lives would be meaningless. Why? If you do not have a resistance to good, well, then doing good is no big deal. That's not something which is noteworthy. If you don't have an attraction to doing bad, well then abstaining from bad is also meaningless. It's not noteworthy at all. Thus, this force, this power, this energy is what creates meaning in the world. Because now that we are driven towards what our body wants, right, what we would call bad, well, we have the opportunity to become great, or to become good. Because now we could resist that. We could say, no, I'm not doing what's bad, and say, I'm going to do what's good, even though it's not, I'm being pulled away from it. Thus, it's exceedingly real, because we have life would be meaningless otherwise. But and thus we could say that our life and the meaning that we're going to have in our life is going to be in this conflict that we're going to have with the Yetzer Hara, with the evil inclination. So, essentially, we could say that our life and the meaning of our life is going to be measured by the degree of success that we're going to have with this combat. Thus, it's very important for us to be successful. What do? We have urges, we have these feelings. It's just chemical. We have chemical desires and passions and wants and whims, and it's there. We didn't cause it. Did someone choose to download the evil inclination? Did we do that? No, we were born like that. We didn't do it. Right? How are we going to overcome it? We need as many ideas and strategies and tactics as possible. So we find in the Talmud like this: Barati Yetzer Hara, Barati Torah Tavlin. This is the book of Kiddushin. God says, I created the Torah, I created the Yetzer Hara, I created the Torah as an antidote. The Torah is the antidote, says the Talmud. When someone has the Torah, they are protected. It's like they have the vaccine. Now, what does that mean? If you have the vaccine, could you encounter, let's say you have the mumps, measles, and rubella vaccine. Can you go give a hug to your friend who has mumps?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're vaccinated, right? You're vaccinated, right?
But the Torah is both the vaccine and the antidote, because one is before not to get it, and the other one is actually.
That's why it's 5A, 5B, maybe even 5C. The Torah is the antidote. How that works is an interesting question. That's all Thomas says, that Torah is the antidote. How does that work? Or the word Torah, what does the word tavlin mean in Hebrew? Oh, it means a spice. The word tavlin, so it's translated as an antidote, but it also can mean a spice. What's the difference between an antidote and a spice? What does a spice do? It takes something and changes it, right? It spices it, right? It's a soup, it's water, and now you put in the soup mix, and now it's water, still water, but now it's water with a flavor. So it changes what something is essentially. But it doesn't alter it, doesn't move it, doesn't banish it. It sweetens it, or it spices it. It makes it palatable. Thus, these are different elements of the same idea. We could say that the Torah really, in our quest to conquer and suppress and vanquish and defeat our Yetzer Hara, the Torah is going to help us because it's going to flavor the Yetzer Hara. Now, what does that mean? Not going to eliminate it, it's going to flavor it. How do you flavor the Yetzer Hara? So we find again in the Talmud, back to the Talmud, Im paga becha menu volzeh, mashcheo lebeit hamedrash. Remember that? Also, it's the same page in Kiddushin Daf Lamed Amud Bet. Im paga becha menu volzeh. If this despicable one attacks you, we're talking about the Yetzer Hara, drag him to the house of study. What's your question, guys? I mentioned the crime factor earlier. You meet someone comes up to you with a gun, God forbid. Right? God forbid. And is trying to rob you or to mug you or to whatever. What is your ideal course of action? Like, what's the ideal result? No. The ideal result is
Pull the Tanakh out.
the ideal result de-escalate, but how you want to be somewhere away from the threat. Like you would want to, if you could escape, without shooting the guy or without being hurt, you would want to escape, right? Makes sense, right?
But then he might go hurt somebody else.
Okay, but there's no one else around, for argument's sake, right? You have this encounter with the Yetzer Hara. If this Yetzer Hara attacks you, what does it say? It says drag him to the house of study. It doesn't say abandon him in the alley and run by yourself to the house of study. It says drag him to the house of study. What essentially it's saying is you take the Yetzer Hara and you bring him with you to the house of study. That's what it says. Mashchehu. How do you translate Mashchehu? We'll have the verification in Hebrew. What is it? How do you translate? Pull him with you. Pull him to the house of study. What it's telling you is that there's this element of the Torah being a way to channel the efforts and the energy of the Yetzer Hara. And how does that work? So the Zohar, we know, the Zohar tells us that if not ilule yitzra de araya, there would be no chedvasa de shmaitza, which is Aramaic for if not for the Yetzer Hara, the inclination for promiscuity, there would be no, not procreation. There would be no excitement of Torah study. Thus, what it's essentially telling us is that the same passion that we have that could be directed towards sin, when channeled to Torah study, we spice it up. It's a spice that enhances our Torah. But the Torah is a kosher outlet for a non-kosher ingredient. That's one idea. Thus, we could say, and that's you drag him with you. Don't let him go because you need him. Drag him with you to the Beit Midrash and use that to improve your Torah study. That's the spice. Then I would say there's the antidote or the vaccine, and we know we have three things that uphold the world. What are the three things? Al Shloshat Dvarim Torah Omed, the Olam Omed. The three things that uphold the world. Al Torah. Three things that uphold the world. Torah, service of God, and chesed, kindness. Now, there are also three cardinal sins that you have to give up your life for. What are they? Adultery, right? Murder, and idolatry. Thus, and the sources make it very clear that these three are parallels of each other. Kindness means to give. What's the most you could take from someone else? Their life. Thus, murder is one extent, the other opposite of the spectrum of kindness. Worshipping God, what's the opposite of that? Well, worshipping idolatry. And what's the opposite of Torah study? Adultery. What do they do with each other? What could they possibly do with each other? How could they be opposites? And then we find, in the end of Hilchot Isurei Bi'ah, which is the laws of prohibited relations, in chapter 21, the Rambam says, Ein machsheves arayos ela belev haponu min hachachma. I'm speaking in Hebrew because I know we have a Hebrew speaker here. There's no thought of promiscuity or licentiousness, only in a heart devoid of wisdom. Thus, what it's telling us is that at the core of sin is an occupation of certain thoughts in your mind. And the Torah, at its core, is occupation of Torah thoughts in your mind. Thus, your mind is going to be full of thoughts. The question is what? Is it going to be Torah? Or is it going to be what the Yetzer Hara is? So if you fill it with Torah, well, then it's the antidote. It's the vaccine. Why is it the vaccine? Well, because there's no thoughts of it. You could go and hug a guy with the mumps, measles, and rubella, right? Well, I wouldn't suggest doing that in the example, the metaphor. But it would it would essentially preclude someone from having that kind of even challenge. It overcomes that. In fact, the Talmud gives a mashal, a story, an example, a parable. It says that you have a father who takes his son and beats him up really bad. And then he has a big bruise. And then the father comes and puts a bandage with some ointment on the bruise. And the father tells the son, as long as you leave the ointment on, the bandage on, you're free to do whatever you want. You can eat foods that are dangerous for this illness. You can take hot showers, cold showers, whatever you want. You won't be damaged as long as you have this catch on. You take it off, you're going to sin right away. So too, the Almighty said to the Jewish people, I beat you up. Why? Because I gave you this Yetzer Hara, this evil inclination. You have a bruise, but I gave you the Torah. The Torah is the antidote. You wear the Torah, you're vaccinated from it. Why? Because if you actually take the Torah to its fullest extent, if you occupy your mind with nothing but Torah, there's no room for those thoughts to enter your mind, and thus you'll be saved from that as well. And additionally, we have another statement which is along these lines. Yafet Torah im derech eretz sheyediyat shnei mishnachat avon. It's good to have Torah with the way of the world, which means with having a regular job, right? You have both of them, because if you toil with both of them, you're going to forget sin. You're going to forget about sin. Thus, the same idea, where when the Torah is in your mind, you forget about sin. Either way, this is 5, A and B and C, whatever. That is that the Torah is the antidote or the spice for overcoming the Yetzer Hara. Ready for 6? Should we go to the more exciting ones, like the more controversial ones at the end?
17.
Let's go something a little
Controversial.
Let's go controversial. I'm planning on making it 25. I have some more. There's more out there for sure.
Wait, let's recap on what we
We started off with kind of very par vanilla ones. I'm going to get now a little more controversial ones. And we had it's a mitzvah. It's an instruction. There's reward. It sharpens your mind. And now we just talked about how it's the number one tool in multiple variations of overcoming our Yetzer Hara, which is this exceedingly good thing that we have, but could influence us and pull us down. Okay, let's go to number 9 here. Let's jump a little ahead. Get controversial. To save the world from utter destruction. What this means is that if there were to be a single second, this is evident in many, many, many sources, if there's a single second where there's no one studying Torah in the entire world, the world would revert back to, yes, exactly, it would be the end. All of us would be toast. We'd all be dead. We'd all be forgotten. We'd all be, that's it. We'd all be done. In fact, in the great Volozhin Yeshiva, mother of all yeshivas, they had a 24-hour schedule. 24/7, there was always someone studying Torah. Because you know what? If there's no one studying Torah, potentially the world could just go. We study Torah, we're saving the world. Thus, in essence, we are doing our little bit of helping save the world studying Torah. You know, I know that there's great stories of some of the great Jewish leaders of the past, several hundred years that made it their business right after Yom Kippur to spend time studying Torah. Right after Yom Kippur finishes, 2 hours Torah study. Why? Because out of the entire year, out of the entire year, this is the time where the world is most vulnerable. Why? Because all the people that are studying Torah, those are the people that are also eating as well. Right?
Different time zones.
Okay, well, you want to rely on? Is that what you want to rely on?
No, the 24/7 thing is good.
We have a verse. This is a verse in the Torah. Im lo brisi yom v'layla, chuko shmai v'aretz l'samti. If not for my covenant of day and night, which is v'yis v'yom v'layla, study Torah day and night, the laws of the world would cease to exist. Well, that's one of the ideas of a Torah. Yes. I don't know. You can ask them.
Well, just because it's the most vulnerable moment is now the most strongest because everybody's studying. Because it was the weakest moment.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Well, since it was the weakest moment, everybody wants to study, so it's not weak.
Yeah.
And
So
now
yeah.
It's the strongest.
The weakest link became the strongest link.
Yeah. We have also back on Shabbos and 88a where it talks about the acceptance of the Torah. It says very clearly. It says that God said to the people, "Make a pact with them. If you accept the Torah, great. If not, I'm going to destroy the world." Additionally, I know in 2006 during the Lebanon War, I brought this with me. I had it with me today. In the Lebanon War in 2006, it's 9 years. I guess from August or July of this year, there was a 34-day war. I don't know if you guys remember it. 34-day war in Lebanon when the Hezbollah was sending these massive rockets, enormous rockets, into Israel. And especially northern Israel was bombarded. There's 1 million refugees, basically. Huh? Yeah, well, the impact was very minimal. Huh? Most people evacuated. Either way, so that came right at the end of the summer schedule, the summer semester in yeshiva. I was yeshiva in Israel at the time, and what do you do? Like, you're in yeshiva, so most people, when you think of what you're doing, well, you're studying Torah. But with this knowledge, what we're also doing is we're saving the world. We are doing more than anything, more than anyone else, to contribute towards saving the world, and most certainly the Jewish people. So, and now in the middle of the war, you have the semester ending, and everyone's going to go on vacations, and everyone's going to leave the yeshiva. It's like, imagine you have a battlefront where the people say, "Hey, my shift is over. Sorry, we're in the middle of a very strategic battle, but sorry, it's already been 4 hours since I had my last break. I'm out. I'm checking out. The whole place
Some
checks out."
people use that in Yom Kippur, right?
What, Yom Kippur?
The war of Yom Kippur.
Well, Yom Kippur, yeah, there's an imminent, yeah. But so we had in 2006 I was in the Mir Yeshiva, the biggest yeshiva in the world, and they said we're canceling invitation. Invitation's over. Not only that, there was the Rosh Yeshiva gave a impassioned speech where he mentioned that what saves the world more, no Torah saves the world more than the Torah where there's a Torah insight. It's as if there's new Torah material that's developed. And therefore he says, I want everyone in yeshiva to write a treatise, a Torah treatise, which is not an easy thing to do at all. So I remember we all wrote, not all of us, of course, there's thousands and thousands of students, but I remember we walked to the office and there's piles like that of just the Torah novelé of the Chidushei Torah of the students. But that's the idea. The Torah study is saving the world. And by the way, going back to the argument that we made earlier, or going back to the political issue in Israel of the army and the yeshiva students, one of this, I think, if we understand this idea, we really, this is an idea that's very important for the dialogue surrounding that issue. Why? Because according to the yeshiva students, who they believe that they're doing more for the safety and security of Israel, studying the book of Kiddushin in some Bet Midrash, in some house of study, than some of the front lines. That's a really strongly held belief by a lot of people, and it's based upon ideas that are In the Torah itself, it says these things.
Yeah, that's what infuriates more of the secular.
Right.
Jews.
Okay, but if you're going to have to bridge the step, you're going to have to understand where everyone's
Yeah,
coming
both
from.
sides. I mean, to solve this, yes, of course.
And I don't think it's an easy thing to. I'm not trying to adjudicate this dilemma, but if you want to understand what the positions are on both sides of the issue, it's very important to realize that on one side there's the argument that whether you agree with it or not, there is an argument that studying Torah in some basement is doing more for Israel's security than fighting hand-to-hand combat and endangering your life.
No,
Whether you agree with that or not, but that's an argument. We'll do a couple more, guys. We're 9:58. Let me quickly run through all of them. Just the taglines.
We could do part 2 next time.
We can do part 2. Let me just run through them. To achieve unbiased intelligence, to achieve Ahavas Hashem, love of God, to fit your character, save a world you mentioned, to create worlds. Ooh, that's a cool one. To be close to the Almighty, you mentioned, to preserve the relationship that we have with the Almighty, to live. Without that, there's no life. It's our food for Olam Haba. It's what we eat in Olam Haba, and to achieve dominion over nature. Like Rabbi Yochanan, when he was studying Torah, what happened with the birds? What happened with the, we know the Torah was given, and the Torah essentially, if the Torah is the blueprint for humanity, if someone has the Torah, then they actually have the keys to the laws of physics, so they could really tamper with it. So all these, or not tamper with it, they could tamper, disable, destroy it. So you have all these stories in the Talmud where the great rabbis are literally changing the rules of nature. And how did they do that? And we have the rabbis splitting the sea, rabbis reviving dead, and what's the deal? Is it just all sorcery? No. It's because they had the Torah to such a degree that they essentially they were a step earlier than the laws of physics. And therefore they can manipulate them, as crazy as that sounds. Either way, I think that this should be sufficient for us to kind of at least get get our feet wet with kind of appreciating the scope of what do we mean by Torah, and what happened on this day, and what we're celebrating, and why the Jewish people have been so dedicated towards the study and the perpetuation of this this wisdom for so long. And I think there's more. There's more where that came from. I think
you did a good job actually putting together all these reasons why people study Torah.
Thank you.
I would like to, the next one, to create worlds.
Create worlds. Oh, yeah. Yitzirat Olamot. Yitzirat Olamot. So that's that, guys. Everyone have a happy holiday. We're hosting an all-you-can-learn on Saturday night. Everyone's welcome to eat. And there's going to be a 2 a.m. barbecue.
So I didn't know you didn't do the dairy thing.
No dairy for me.